Hi, this is Jared Polak, founder of Entre Results, author of Entre Balance. Looking forward to another podcast today. Today is going to be a little bit different. I just wanted to give you a heads up. This is going to be probably about 30 minutes long. And so this is really a good, perfect topic for many people in business development, but specifically for those that are involved in direct sales, multi-level marketing. This is a great topic. So I know a lot of you guys are used to kind of a 2 to 6 minute podcast. So this is going to be a little bit longer. Just wanted to give you a heads up. We're going to look at relationship-based sponsoring and selling using the DISC communication tool. So DISC, we're going to kind of go into a little bit about DISC. If you've never taken DISC before, reach out to us at entreresults.com, and we'll give you a DISC. But even if you haven't taken DISC, this is going to be very helpful if you're in direct sales or multi-level marketing and you're looking to grow a team, you're looking to recruit, you're looking to sponsor, and then also you're looking just to sell more of your product. Okay, imagine this. Imagine the worst possible bad experience that you have ever had with a sales professional. Think about where you were when you experienced that bad interaction with someone trying to sell you something. Or perhaps you have had a bad experience in the past with a different direct sales company or different multi-level marketing company, and it made you feel icky. It made you feel bad when you were having that interaction. Sometimes people automatically go to the car lot when they think about maybe a bad situation that they may have had. Well, when you think about the reasons why you had a bad experience, oftentimes it was because the person that was selling you something was not genuine. Perhaps they were pushy or overly aggressive. Maybe they didn't communicate at all. Maybe they were just trying to push you in a direction you didn't want to go. Maybe you felt high pressure. Or perhaps they just didn't care. They weren't listening to you. They weren't listening to your needs. Maybe you were dismissed a little bit based on your appearance when you went to purchase something. I've asked this question to many groups over many years, doing many talks, and there's certain characteristics that people just hate about the stereotypical salesperson, which also relates to the stereotypical person that's involved in direct sales. And so today we're going to really identify two problems, and then we're going to really kind of tackle two questions. And this is using the DISC profile. Number one, the problem that we have is perhaps the problem is that we are, in some instances, that stereotypical salesperson. And what the DISC profile does, it allows us to see things differently, allows us to see some of our blind spots, and will help us not be that stereotypical salesperson. The other thing that DISC can help with as we look at sponsoring, selling, recruitment, we have this overwhelming fear that we are going to be that stereotypical salesperson when we're recruiting, when we're trying to build our team, or even sometimes when we're trying to sell our products. And what happens is we go to the opposite extreme, and we actually don't serve people or don't offer or really benefit and help people benefit from our products or our services, or we really don't get out there enough to help people benefit from joining our organization because there's this fear of not wanting to be the stereotypical salesperson. And I would say that the DISC profile will help us approach this in a very professional way that will allow us to have a middle ground where we can grow our organization, grow our team, but yet at the same time not be that stereotypical salesperson. Today we're going to look at two questions. One is, what is DISC? And two, which is the majority of what we're going to spend our time on today, is how do I use DISC to help sponsor or recruit or bring more people into my organization, or how do I use DISC to sell? Those are the two things that we're going to look at. Now, I know many of you perhaps listening to this, or this is going to be turned into several different blogs, I'm sure later, just because the content is so powerful. There's a couple people here that maybe haven't taken this or heard from DISC, so I'm going to give a quick overview of DISC. Many of you, if you've taken the DISC through Entre Results, I'm going to specifically reference maybe a few pages. This is a powerful handout that you can take that really goes into much more detail. So today we're not going to really explain DISC to the fullest. I want to focus more on how we can use DISC to help sponsor and sell, but I'm just going to give a quick overview on DISC. Okay, DISC stands for D-I-S-C, and I've been trained in DISC. I can't tell you, countless different organizations. I've heard talks on DISC. The D-I-S-C do stand for different words based on the different assessments that people take, but I'm going to kind of take you through a few words that DISC represents. So D can stand for decisive or direct, dominant. Okay, that's what the D stands for. I would be interactive, inspiring, inspirational. S would be stability, stable, steadfast. And C can be cautious, conscientious, correct, concise. And what we do is many people have a dominant characteristic of those four. Even more common, people have two that are a little bit higher than others. And we have 100 being the highest, 0 being the least. So if you're above the line, that would be above 50. Many people usually have a couple above the line and a couple below the line. But then there's a variety of other people, which honestly, if you are more middle ground in multiple different areas, it's a little bit less accurate, because you can go either way in many different situations. So that's how it's broken up. DISC is a behavioral communication tool that can be used. Don't think this is this is a platform we use, a tool we use. It's not going to hit you 100% right on every one of these things. However, for those that you have taken this, if you have not read through it, that is what I really encourage you to do, to really learn more in detail what DISC is if you look at page 2, there's a graph of your DISC, and there's explanation that you can see throughout that explains a little bit more about DISC. It's a little bit more advanced than this small talk today. But we have two different styles. We have the natural style and we have the adaptive style. We're going to focus a lot more on the natural style today as we refer to DISC. As you look at page 2, the DISC is in the colors, the natural styles in the colors, I should say. And so the natural styles is it's when you're authentic to yourself, you're true to yourself. It's when you're under stress. This is your natural characteristic. This is what you go to in a natural and under stressful moment. This is really your core of who you really are. It's harder to change this. And then the other graph, the gray, is the adaptive style. This is when you feel you're being observed, or it's a little bit less authentic to you when you feel, maybe sometimes in a work situation, especially if you're new to that work situation, you adjust your style a little bit. And so that's how these two are worked together. A lot of times they're very close or similar. Sometimes if there's huge distortions between the natural and the adaptive, sometimes you're in an uncomfortable moment or season of life. That is a little bit about DISC, a little bit about the overview of DISC, but obviously you have to read more to understand more. Now, the thing that we start off with is understanding, all right, who are you in the DISC profile? Are you more of a DI, more of a DC? Is your S high, SC, IS? What is your characteristics? So the first thing to do is understand our characteristics. How do we like to behave in a sponsoring situation, in a selling situation? What is our natural inclination? It's important to understand that to begin with. However, and I am very passionate about this. It is not about you, and it's not about me when we're communicating to other people, particularly in a one-on-one situation. What we want to do is we want to be able to best communicate, best interact with the person that is in front of us in a sponsoring or a selling situation. So first, we need to understand our communication pattern, our behavioral pattern based on DISC. But more importantly, we have to be willing to overcome certain things about our communication styles to better communicate for the person that's in front of us. So caring enough to enter into the world of the person that we are looking to sponsor or join our organization, or is simply someone that is going to purchase one of our products. So people ask me all the time, how do we know where other people are in the DISC profile? How do we even know so we can communicate the appropriate way? Well, one way would be, honestly, if possible, and there are certain situations where it is possible to give people DISC. Like definitely when people join the organization, or giving them a DISC, so understanding communication is very important. Sometimes it's actually even something you can give them a DISC while they're looking or curious about joining your organization. And that it's helpful as you communicate with them, so you can read theirs, they can read yours, and you can better communicate as you're making this decision together what the best fit is for them. However, a lot of times that isn't possible, and so we're just going to kind of look at a little bit of the characteristics that maybe you can think about as you meet someone. So first of all, D would be direct, dominant, decisive. If you had that first meeting with someone and they're all about the bottom line, they want a quick response, they're very short and terse in terms of their interaction, oftentimes they might be a higher D in the DISC profile. That might be their bent. And so most likely, if someone responds to you in that way, then we should communicate back in a similar situation, a little bit quicker, a little bit more to the point, not quite as many long stories, not giving too many abundance of details. And so we can read that. If someone is a high I in the DISC profile, they might initially communicate with you with a story, or sometimes there may be a perception of being a little bit kind of jumping off track, jumping back and forth, maybe a little bit hard to follow, maybe very animated with their hands or their facial expressions. And so if someone's a high I, then it's sometimes important to use stories to share about the business when you're looking to sponsor, and respond back with stories as well. And we're going to get more detailed as we get into this talk a little bit more, but I'm just giving you a quick overview of how to know. S, people that are stable or steady. Maybe these individuals have been in the same home for 30 years. They don't like change as much. But also people that are S's are very good listeners. They're very good at just that one-on-one personal communication. Not as big on quick change. And so just kind of read people if they're very maybe softer spoken, perhaps very not quite as animated with their hands. You can read that they're an S. And the majority of the population is an S. That is the highest characteristic, whether it's the primary or secondary in terms of communication. S is the most common. And then finally, C, this would be perhaps the engineering type, the meticulous lawyer type person. You can think about backgrounds as well. Someone that maybe starts asking detailed questions off the bat, very meticulous, perhaps loves charts and graphs. If you can read that from anyone, they're most likely a high C. And so, again, if you're used to telling stories and someone wants graphs, we have to adjust to maybe be a little bit more detailed oriented in sharing the business opportunity as we look to sponsor people to join our organization. That is the short, brief overview of DISC, but I really want to look at in terms of relationship-based sponsoring and selling with DISC, how can we take that information and use it even more specifically to sponsor people? Now, what I want to do is I want to look at a general model, and this is good to write down this model. A general model that we use for a recruitment, a sponsoring process. Again, if you have a even more detailed process, this works, but this is a general overview that can help you take you through how to sponsor people in kind of the order or sort of an overview that helps, as well as if you're selling, this is a selling model that works. It's a model that works with communication, and go ahead and write this down. And as we look at this model for sponsoring and selling, our examples might be more about sponsoring, but this works for selling as well. I want you to, we're gonna apply DISC to this selling model. So just kind of bear with me for a second. So the model is BASS, the BASS selling model. BASS. The B stands for build a relationship. The B stands for build a relationship. And we already talked, hey, this is all about relationship-based selling. If you, as a person in direct sales, it is all about the relationship. And so the recruitment and the selling needs to be all about the relationship. The A is ask questions. Ask questions. Questions are the most powerful way to be more effective with sponsoring and selling. S is solve a need. S stands for solve a need. Essentially, you've asked great questions, and based on what you hear, we're going to solve that need. The next S is secure the next step. Secure the next step. What is the next step? Is the next step for them to join that day? Is the next step to schedule another meeting over coffee or over the phone to go over things in more detail? Know how many interactions you need to have, but always have a next step. So we have the BASS recruitment model, the BASS sales model, build a relationship, ask questions, solve a need, and secure the next step. As we go through that model, we're going to look at how DISC applies to that model in each of these areas. And here we go. So, regardless of whether you are, say we're going to start with a high, people that are high Ds in the DISC profile, even if you aren't a high D, this will be helpful for you as well, because again, this is there might be some characteristics that you have that this also applies to. Okay, so when you're building a relationship, so if someone's interested in joining your organization, we have to be aware, if you're a high D, we're going to start off with D, is you can oftentimes be too quick, too to the point. Sometimes people that are high Ds lack a little bit of humility, a little bit arrogant. I do have a high D, so I will, it sounds bad to say it, but that's just sort of a natural bent that a lot of Ds have. Sometimes people that are high Ds think everyone should adjust to the way they are. And so as you're building a relationship, that's very unhealthy. If you're looking to sponsor someone and have them join your team, you can kind of bulldoze people a little bit. If you have a high D and a high C, then that is going to be very unrelational in many ways too, and so it's going to be even harder to relate. So just be aware of those things, not being too quick to move forward, not be too bottom line. Spend some time to continue to build that relationship. As asking questions comes into play, if you're a high D, oftentimes Ds are not as good at listening. We really want to tell more. And so we're always telling people what to do, not listening and asking questions. The other thing is always thinking about what we're going to say next. I know that's an issue with a lot of people, but listen, you really want to ask questions. How do you see this affecting your family if you joined our organization? How do you see this benefiting your future? What kind of financial reward do you want? Or, tell me a little bit about what the purpose of your life is, and listen to what people say, and maybe if someone says, listen, I have 3 kids, I want to be able to stay home, or I want to be able to make an extra $1,000 or $2,000 or $500 a month or whatever, being able to listen to that is so important. And oftentimes D's don't spend time to listen. And then when you look at solving a need, again, if you don't ask the right questions, sometimes D's are challenged because they're just not listening. But also, sometimes we say, this is what you need to do, as opposed to maybe a little bit softer. Listen, I heard you say that you want to stay home with your kids. I recommend this, as opposed to telling people, make recommendations, or be a little softer with solving the need that they said. Finally, securing the next step. This is where D's sometimes thrive. Usually very good at asking for business normally good at overcoming that fear. And oftentimes, as long as D's learn how to better adapt to relationship-based and asking questions and solving needs, sometimes they're really good at growing a team, because it's just naturally a little bit better at asking for the business or asking for someone to join the organization. So that is how D relates to the BAS selling model. Now, if you're a higher I, and again, there's blends of these things, so we're not trying to pigeonhole you into just one, but we're looking at general behavioral and communication characteristics. As we look at I's, and we look at building a relationships, listen, I's are everyone's best friends. It just comes natural and very talkative, and will always want to be the center of attention naturally. And so, again, if it's all about you, it's all about attention, you're the one doing all the talking, sometimes that can be a big downplay for people, especially people that are a high C in the DISC profile. There's a lack of trust that is created if you're all about stories, or oftentimes I's have less details when they're building the relationships as well, which sometimes there needs to be a little bit more detailed when you're building that relationship. Now, there's an enthusiasm, there's a love for people in groups that's very helpful for building that relationship. So that's the one really positive that's very helpful with I in terms of the B and the building the relationship. When you're asking questions, again, sometimes I's aren't great at asking questions because they're busy talking. And so sometimes we need to really ask and spend time listening. Not natural also at putting together questions. Sometimes I's like to wing it a little bit, and it's better and this is for all of us here, is to create some questions that we ask every time when you're looking to sponsor. What are these 3 or 4 or 5 questions that get to the heart of what you want to learn about from the person that you're in front of? And I sometimes have a challenge doing that. Also, I's sometimes they bounce around a little bit, so it's hard to actually. You think about the BAS selling model, sometimes it's hard to kind of go down a path because they're so scattered. And so, it's important to be a little bit more organized to plan out the questions. Solving a need, again, as long as we got to the point where we've asked questions, sometimes people can be very inspirational with solving a need. Listen, I heard that you're very big into giving to organizations, to serving and helping children. Our organization is all about that. We donate this amount of money per year, and we love seeing the faces and the way that we change lives. And so sometimes I's can be very inspirational when they're solving a need. And securing the next step can be difficult for I's because I's have a fear of ruining relationships. They always want to be liked. And so therefore, sometimes it's hard for them to ask, hey, what do you say? What are you thinking about this? When would you like to get started? Those kind of closing questions, or, what do you want to do next? What's the next step? Those are sometimes difficult questions for high I's to ask. As we look at people that are high S's, we look at building a relationship. Again, going through the BAS model at building a relationship. Usually, S's are really good at this. Not always good at taking control of the process, but very good at talking to people one-on-one, very good at listening, easy to build rapport usually. So building a relationship usually comes pretty good, especially on a one-to-one basis with S's. Asking questions, usually S's are very good at listening, and so if you have good questions, usually S's are very good at listening and staying focused in that, and very sincere, very real about caring about the person in front of them. Now, when you get to solving the needs, sometimes S's can be hesitant to confidently make a recommendation. If you have a higher S, sometimes there can be a challenge, even though you've listened to them and it might be a good fit for them to join your organization. Sometimes it's hard to make that solid recommendation. So it's important to be more confident when making a recommendation for S's. And for securing the next step, again, this is someplace in S's are a little bit naturally weak and not bold enough to ask for the next step, not bold enough to just ask if they want to jump on board with you on the team. They never want to make people feel uncomfortable, so that people will avoid being the stereotypical salesperson like the plague. S's are very common, and most of people, this is the most common characteristic, so most people fear being that stereotypical salesperson, so sometimes they don't actually secure a next step or never actually ask in a clear way if someone wants to join the organization. So just be aware of that if you're a high S. Finally, as we look at the Bass model, building a relationship for high C's. C's are not naturally people-oriented, naturally a little bit more technical, make decisions based on reason, not on emotions. And so sometimes if you're dealing with someone that's like, again, with all these, if you're dealing with someone similar to you, it can be positive. But if a C is interacting with someone that's a very high I or much of a storyteller, that can be very demotivating if everything's about logic and reason. So sometimes you have to get a little bit more emotional during the relationship stage. And then sometimes C's can be a little bit more critical about certain situations. So just be careful not to be critical as you're building that relationship. Asking questions, sometimes C's, I've seen C's in direct sales being great at this. They have meticulous questions that they ask it every time. Very, very powerful. And also there's a foresight of creating process to ask questions. A lot of times C's are good at following like the Bass selling model or certain models that they create, and that can be a very good thing. In terms of solving a need, if following the process, they can, C's can make good recommendations, but again, going back to not being inspiring, sometimes, if it's a family situation, sometimes you have to get a little bit more emotional as opposed to just the straight up logic of what what your organization can do. So again, trying to work on being more inspiring. And then securing the next step. Not necessarily a natural thing for C's, but sometimes if you're good at following process, so people that are C's definitely can ask for the business as long as they're following a process. Okay, that's a quick overview of DISC as it relates to the Bass selling model, and I know it's a lot like drinking from a water hose. But I want to close with, I call it a little bonus close, although this could really be a whole topic in itself, but I want to close with this. Top 11 ideas for becoming an all-star in sponsoring. And again, this is more about sponsoring than anything. Top 11 ideas for becoming an all-star in sponsoring. And number one, having the right mindset, having a long-term approach, not always about immediate results. To sponsor people, it takes time. Long-term relationships, it's relationship-based recruiting. Relationships take time. Relationships take trust. Okay, and as I go through this, these aren't necessarily in order of top priority or anything like that, but these are things to think about. Number two, track how many people you share the business with per month. So know how many people you share the opportunity with. Track that and know how many people you share it with, and then the ratio for how many people actually end up joining your organization. Set specific goals in just the amount of shares. Measure, and a lot of the C's like high C's like this, track the number of people that are curious, or how many warm or hot prospects of everyone you've talked to, how many people are a little bit curious about joining your direct sales organization. A good goal would be to have about 20 people that are curious at all times. Number 4, view your customers and those hosting your shows as best potential new team members. So people hosting and obviously your customers are the best possible people to sponsor. Number 5, have multiple ways to share. Maybe you share in a group with multiple people. Maybe it's one-on-one. Maybe we go more virtual. Maybe we go more phone, more technology, conference calls. Just think about multiple ways to share based on where people are at geographically. Number 6, focus on inviting people to hear the opportunity. So just focus on how many people do you invite. Do you invite 50 people to hear it per month, 100 people per month, 10 people per month? Focus on the number of invites. If we start focusing on these key performance indicators, these metrics, it'll help sponsor more. Number 7, invite the same people until they tell you not interested. Don't give up on people until they tell you they're not interested. But you can give them an out. You don't want to be the stereotypical salesperson, so you can say, listen, if you're not interested, just let me know. I will not follow up. But until they tell you that, keep following up. Number 8, invite people in several different ways. Maybe you text, maybe use social media. Use those different medias that are available. Number 9, don't assume someone is not interested. Never assume. Number 10 is follow up, follow up, follow up. With people, you just have to follow up over and over again. The fortune's in the follow up. And the final one, number 11, and this is to loop it back to really the topic today, which is about relationship-based sponsoring and selling with DISC. Realize people are different in the DISC profile. People have different behavioral and communication styles, and adjust your style within reason to the people you're in front of. Care enough to enter their world so you can make it very attractive to them to join your team. That is what we're all about. I know many of you may want to go even more deeper with DISC. DISC is an awesome tool to use in all types of relationships, whether it's family, spouse, faith memberships. DISC is an awesome tool to use to be in communication. Obviously, we focused on really about sponsoring and selling with DISC today. Go out, take action, and have fun building your team.